Government circumvention of individual rights, a scenario on vaccination through the food supply. In an era where public health policies intersect with individual freedoms, the prospect of governments seeking to circumvent personal medical decisions raises ethical and scientific concerns. One such scenario is the possibility of introducing vaccines into the food supply to immunize populations against their will. Could a government, under the guise of public health, mandate widespread vaccination through livestock, crops, or processed food? This essay explores the feasibility of such a scheme, referencing scientific studies, public policies, and potential health risks, while presenting a counter-argument on why such a strategy may not be viable. Scenario: government-backed vaccination through the food supply. Suppose a government encounters significant resistance to a mandatory vaccination program. It integrates mRNA-based or protein subunit vaccines into the food chain to bypass individual consent. Several methods could be employed. 1. Genetically modified crops. Scientists have already experimented with edible vaccines in plants. A 2003 study in Nature Biotechnology explored using transgenic potatoes to deliver an oral vaccine for hepatitis B. In theory, crops such as tomatoes, rice, or lettuce could be engineered to express vaccine antigens, allowing consumers to ingest them unknowingly. 2. Livestock and poultry vaccination. Livestock could be injected with a vaccine that remains in the muscle tissue. When consumed, humans might absorb traces of the vaccine. A 2013 Journal of Virology article noted that some viral vaccines remain detectable in animal products post-vaccination. 3. Aerosolized vaccines in agriculture. The USDA has explored aerosol vaccines for poultry farms to immunize birds en masse. A similar approach could aerosolize vaccines over large croplands, potentially exposing farm workers and consumers to vaccine particles. 4. Water supply contamination vaccines could be introduced into municipal water supplies. A 2006 study in Environmental Health Perspectives highlighted how pharmaceutical contaminants persist in drinking water. Some mRNA-based vaccines rely on lipid nanoparticles, which could theoretically be stabilized in water and absorbed through ingestion. Scientific and public policy risks. While the above scenarios present a disturbing picture of government overreach, they also introduce substantial scientific and policy-based risks. Inconsistent dosage and immune response. The human immune system requires precise dosages and delivery methods for adequate immunization. Vaccines administered through food would face degradation from stomach acids and digestive enzymes, reducing efficacy. The Journal of Immunology Research, 2018, confirms that oral vaccines require special coatings to withstand the harsh gastric environment. Unintended consequences on public health. If vaccines enter the food supply unpredictably, allergic reactions or autoimmune responses could increase. The Lancet, 2020, reported on mRNA vaccine-induced myocarditis, raising concerns about uncontrolled exposure. Regulatory and ethical challenges. Forcibly vaccinating the population through food would violate fundamental ethical principles, such as informed consent, protected under the Nuremberg Code and the Belmont Report. Such policies would also contradict U.S. FDA guidelines, which require transparency in food and drug labeling. Liability and public backlash. Any covert vaccination strategy would likely face legal challenges under the Public Health Service Act and the Consumer Right to Know Act, leading to lawsuits against corporations and government agencies. Counterargument. Why this strategy is not viable. Despite the hypothetical possibility, the scientific and logistical barriers to mass food-based vaccination are considerable. 1. Dosage control is impossible. Vaccines require precise dosing to ensure efficacy while minimizing side effects. Introducing vaccines into food or water would lead to extreme variability in exposure, rendering immunization ineffective. 2. Vaccine breakdown in digestion. Most vaccines, especially mRNA-based ones, rely on intramuscular injection to avoid degradation. If ingested, they would likely be destroyed by stomach acids and enzymes before reaching the bloodstream. 3. Tissue retention is minimal. While some vaccines can persist in animal tissue, their concentration is typically too low to elicit an immune response in humans. The USDA Food Safety and Inspection Service states that animal-derived food products undergo rigorous safety checks to prevent pharmaceutical contamination. 4. Public awareness and resistance. In the digital age, covert food supply operations would be highly scrutinized. The likelihood of whistleblowers, independent testing, and media investigations makes sustained secrecy nearly impossible. 5. Economic and legal repercussions. Global markets would retaliate if a government were caught engaging in covert vaccination. Food safety organizations like the WHO Codex Alimentarius Commission would impose strict sanctions, crippling international trade. Conclusion: the balance between public health and individual rights. While it is theoretically possible to integrate vaccines into food supplies, the practical, scientific, and ethical barriers make it highly unlikely. Any attempt by the government to enforce vaccination through covert means would face insurmountable resistance from both the scientific community and the public. More importantly, such actions would violate legal and ethical standards, potentially triggering widespread social unrest. Ultimately, governments have broad public health powers but are not limitless. Transparency, consent, and ethical policymaking remain critical to maintaining trust and upholding the principles of individual liberty.